second, because one thing that I've learned from running conferences now is that the technology is never going to line up as easily as you want it to. So, hey, I might be pacing back and forth to click on things because you're going to see this presentation is probably a ride. But my name's Brennan. I work at Shopify, as mentioned. I previously worked at Spotify. Yes, that does trip everyone up. And I used to work in book publishing. I kind of fell into organizing internal conferences at Shopify. Thank you. Ooh, handy. I've never actually used a clicker, despite all of this. So the other piece is that I'm used to being kind of behind the scenes, literally having a headset on for like 72 hours in all black. So let me know if I'm going too fast or if you've got any questions along the way. So, that's me. My pronouns are she, her. I currently work remotely in Brooklyn, New York. Shopify is headquartered in Ottawa, Ontario. I'm a senior technical program manager, and fortunately at Shopify, we're lucky enough to have like loads of internal learning teams. I'm in one called R&D programs, which is got 2 subgroups, and I'm in R&D learning, which focuses on technical education for specifically just developers, people in data, product managers, and people in UX. So some things I'm likely to say. When I say R&D, it's those groups. That's my team. When I say session by accident instead of ++, that's our white label name. And as such, all of the events inside of it, we call sessions. Sometimes I say GSD, which is a project management framework for 5 different phases of how to get a project done at Shopify, get shit done. We've got an internal wiki, and I'm really lucky to work somewhere that has a company-wide value. We've got 6 declared, one of which is be a constant learner. So that's how I get to co-opt a couple of days each year. So let's do this. So this is me. These are some of the jobs that I used to have. I was like a campus tour guide. I worked in book publishing, mostly for academic monographs in the humanities. That's a fun one. I worked at a veterinary clinic, and I spent a couple of years at Spotify, and I'm doing this now. So I'm going to try to play a video of R&D Summit, which is the event that Marco was talking about before, and then I'm going to walk you through it at a slower pace, because it's quite distracting. Let me see if there's audio. Amazing. Cool. Beautiful. Thanks so much. You can hear it loosely.
We have embarked on something a bit mad, and we have brought all of the R&D disciplines together this year as part of a grand experiment.
And once you have that kind of deep knowledge, you get a better sense of the questions to ask. You also get a better sense of problems when they're arising.
So whenever an idea pops into someone's brain or mind at Shopify, we have to make it work, we have to make it fast, we have to make it reliable, we have to make it run 24/7, and that's what unifies us.
It's really never been a better time to start a business, thanks to all the hard work we've been doing.
So I'm lucky enough we've got an internal AV team, and I convinced them to do this to lead into this year's. So that was 2018. I'm looking out at everyone's faces and being like, how do we feel? What do we think? It's a very overwhelming project, so I'm going to try to talk about what the actual day is, because that was like the flashy version, instead of paying attention to the important part, which is the content. So people at Shopify this year, about 1,500 people, came in. They got their bracelets in the morning. Then we made sure that they got a swag bag reinforcing the Shopify mission of supporting merchants and make commerce better for everyone. So the bag itself and everything inside of it was eco-friendly and all from Shopify merchants. So they got a notebook and a pen, and they got a little like snack bag because later I made them scoop granola. They got their coffee to get going, and then there's me. We all went off in different directions to focus on 4 morning tracks and main stages. I worked with our C-suite to help declare 3 main objectives and learning goals that they each wanted to make sure their organizations would know, so that they would be able to find kind of the skills or knowledge or technical understanding of what they would want their groups to do. It's very rare and unexpected to get everyone kind of captured in one spot, because fitting 1,000 developers in a room is very difficult. We also were lucky enough to have this year a half hour of the CEO's time, Toby, with each of the 4 disciplines. So we got 2 hours of him in the morning speaking to the value of each craft, what he thought was important in terms of our philosophy for how we work with data. So that's our VP of Data, Solmaz. Our feelings on data privacy, other fundamentals that he wanted to make sure the data org knew, or UX, etc. Then we went off into lunchtime, and we had a lot of different activations around the space that were also engaging in learning with our different learning teams around the org. So another area under our R&D learning team is dev degree. So we will pay your tuition for 4 years to get a Bachelor of Computer Science, and you spend 20 hours a week in our office, and the other 20 getting credits. Reach out to me if you want to quit your job and come join. We've also got Bridge the Gap, which is our internal program to connect with our support organization. We had some people stationed all day so that people from our R&D department could join our support team and actually respond to specific chats and emails incoming from our merchants, so that they could understand those problems even better and get some cross-department sympathy in addition to what's usually just technical training. In the afternoon, people got to break out into many smaller sessions. So you saw some of the numbers there, which were bonkers. But we had, I believe it was 25 rooms this year throughout the conference center for people to choose individual talks, workshops, and open discussions that they wanted to focus on, which were based on the same subjects as what was taught in the morning. Some groups stayed insular to themselves. Product management had some goals in the morning, and then they could choose from product management sessions in the afternoon. Others opted to cross-pollinate, where dev and data said, hey, doors wide open, come on in and see anything. So there's some people. I just liked this one. We brought in a merchant who's seated on the left there to talk to some people so that they could hear problems directly. That was one really exciting open discussion workshop that was moderated by a product manager. And then by the evening, we said, okay, great job. We had you learn an entire dense day of things. But the whole point of making people be co-located in this way and bringing us together and having these 4 distinct groups be identified is to say at the end, we're really all just one. We're one R&D department. This is how we produce our products, and we brought them together and fed them in a CFL football arena. So this is the basketball court inside. We had disciplined dodgeball. So that's product versus data. Data won. We had some field games that were outside. And then we had live band karaoke, and like this woman killed. So that's kind of the specs of what I did this past year. We had over 140 people speak between the 4 main stages and the things that we had going on in the afternoon. We used ++ in order to list over 100 sessions for people to be able to join and engage in things. And we had the amazing metric that of people who did attend, 95% said that they would want to come back and they found value and would want to learn again in this way. So we wouldn't really be at an education conference if I didn't declare the learning objectives. So my thesis is you should have people learn together in real time. And I don't think that that necessarily means co-located. We'll get into some remote options as well. The 3 tenets under that seems like a lot of work. Why would I do this? 5 things that you would need to consider if you do any kind of learning event. It doesn't need to be as large as that and huge groups. It could just be a meetup in your office. It could be many different things. And what you'll want to think about how they interact and getting some help. So the amount of work, a lot of people could see something like this and think like, oh, that's real spendy. Like, what's the point of doing this? There's a certain pomp and circumstance to this type of event. Is it really worth the money and the value? So we're going to go down a real weird tangent. Please bear with me. And people are going to get real excited in terms of this whole engaging with strangers and meeting new people through mentorship and like how we're going to interact with everyone, because you're going to really see my philosophy degree right now. So this guy is Gilles Deleuze. He was doing stuff from the 1970s to like 2000s. French, real smart guy. He's mostly taught continental philosophy. And a concept that he had was developing the theory of how ideas grow. He was focused on how does knowledge spread? And he used an analogy based on plants and trees because he felt that ideas generate in the same way as really any life does. It's organic. I know, right? Someone earlier thought this was going to be dry. Wait for the next slides. So we're tired of trees, and we should stop believing in trees and roots and radicals. We don't need that sage on the stage. That was my own edit. They've made us suffer too much. Nothing is so beautiful from that root. And instead, we should think about the underground stems and aerial root, the growth and rhizomes. What are rhizomes? Rhizomes are a continuously growing horizontal underground stem, which puts out lateral shoots and adventitious roots at intervals. But really, the concept that this philosopher was teaching was that there is no hierarchy needed for information to be shared. You do not need a top-down piece. You don't actually need one expert and one source. Sure, there might be information only one person knows at a time, but the more you spread it, the more it's going to evolve and change, the more you're going to have these different nodes of information and different versions of it, and they're going to be linked and interconnect to one another. In that way, ideas really won't ever go away, even if employees move along or we do different things, because we're going to have new interpretations and context on stuff. Because it's how we learn. We learn just in that way. Things are going to be decentralized. You come with your existing knowledge, and you're like, oh, I see how that applies. You know something, and you apply from that subject. Maybe rhizomes were not what you were expecting to learn about today, but you're like, oh, I see where a little piece of this works. Or you're coming with the context of saying, like, this woman is wild. No. So mushrooms are a rhizome, by the way, so are dandelions and a few different things. But let's say me, and I'm on the stage here talking about something. And then you know, I feel like Marco has been smiling a lot, and so then like, oh, Marco's interpreting something, like this is real exciting. And there's like a certain connection and change of knowledge. And then maybe he goes talking to someone else, and they get a little piece of context, but they were in the bathroom, and it's all right. And then there's all these different connections, and people end up discussing the ideas between each other without needing the person who was talking in the first place. And we've got all these different types of things that are happening and kind of diversify the root of the concept. And then, you know, there's someone who was like, I needed coffee. So that's how I'm going to break off from this whole rhizome thing. But that's why I think it's really valuable to bring people together for learning, to not always do it independently, self-serving, in context. Incredibly valuable. I've got an entire rest of my team that does that. I'm my little lone wolf over here trying to be like, no, but the people, which is kind of the opposite you might think when you're going globally. But it doesn't have to be physically co-located. There are so many ways, whether through Zoom or communities and conversations that we can lead and moderate on Slack, and other ways to make people say, oh, I get it now. I've got that connection in that relationship. So, sweet, but you're not sold yet. You could do it this way, but why should you do it this way? Different French guy. This one's called Jacques Derrida. You can read of hospitality, or it's about an hour-long lecture. But basically, if you've watched NBC's The Good Place or anything else, there are certain things that we owe to share to each other. You don't own these concepts. You don't own these ideas. And we're only going to grow and improve and get better at things when we do interact. Of Hospitality talks about the idea of encountering a brand new person and speaking with them and saying you should approach them with kindness. You should approach with a certain openness and say, hey, I'm curious, what's going on? Because when you share and you engage in that different way, it's going to just grow and make things richer and be a value add instead of ever taking time and being a decrease. And so when you approach in that lens, it's going to be really valuable. The things that we personally experience, transcendental empiricism, yeah, that's how far down the rabbit hole we're going. It says that anything we experience actually makes a concept, the things we're thinking about, these ideas feel real to us. I'm saying the words transcendental empiricism, but how many interesting conversations or new ideas did you feel this morning by being in a room with someone else and going, oh yeah, they get me too, and that makes it more concrete for you? Because when we feel something happen and experience it, it's real. And so if organizations very often say that in addition to learning specific skills that they want community, then we need to prioritize actually giving space for community instead of always going off and doing our product work. I was talking with my CPO last week, being like, hey, Craig, is this gonna happen again? Do I get a budget? And he said, what I really want is one day that is equivalent to 1 month or 1 year at Shopify so that they know how we do this here. He found the value that people will learn, sure, on the job, making their own mistakes, hearing case studies, but by interacting with other people in the product organization, he felt that they would gain so much more knowledge instead of feeling that they had to go at it alone. So this is me. I'm learning that my GIFs aren't going to animate, but I'm just like, I don't know what's happening. No pressure. How do I accomplish that? So I have my own theory. I think an event is made up of 5 decisions that I have to do at minimum. Everything else is gravy on top. Who defines these? Oh, I ruined the lead-in. Me. Or you, probably, hopefully. So if you have the benefit of being on a technical learning team, great. You can kind of guide the ship of what is the content and what is the root of the thing that we're going to be talking about. Why are we doing this? Not, the attendees and the people that you're looking for, and not just the operations of like, how do I get a building? But you can say, what is the end goal and the objective? Basically, you are product. I'm sorry, from whatever your background is, I know some people feel like this is controversial, but I see program management as product management. And conferences are a product that you produce. There is an objective. We have a whole shape to them. There's something that's happening that says, why are we doing this? What are the success metrics of needing this to happen? And what are the key components that assemble the entire experience? So I made 5 rhyming pieces for us to focus on. I think always start with your content. Your content is king, to use that trope. You want to pay attention to what should happen. What's the objective of this? How are we going to actually get that out there? And what's the best format to get that out there? Is it like an actual conference? Is it more of a meetup? Is it a one-off? All these different types of things. What are the skills? How much do we want to interact? Is it important that everyone be in one space, or do we open up to all different kinds of choices? And once you know what your content is, you can start thinking about the experience of an event, which is the concept, really. How do we spread what this goal, what this objective is? If part of it is community building, you know, what can I say in the language and the titles of things? You can tell I had a brief stint in a content strategy. How do we title this? What are the themes? What's the tone? I used the aesthetics of 4 unique colors in order to identify each discipline as their own piece, and then say, but neutrally, collectively, we are one R&D, and have these things be reinforced by the way we displayed it. The duration, which is often a constraint of budget and time and what you're doing in your product release cycle. Are we doing this kind of in the middle of the workday, or are we saying, no, this is a dedicated separate thing? Or is it 1 hour every couple of weeks? Are we doing all of this in one go? Do I get a 3-day block, or are we going to stagger it where I get 1 day, then you can go and digest, and then you can have another afternoon later once you've really reflected on the material and taken something in? Are the objectives recurring for it? Is this a one-time goal where I don't need it to be a year-over-year expectation that it's going to be coming back? And time. Once you know what you want to teach and what your time constraints are, it's a lot easier to find a venue. That could be just in your office. It's as simple as that, and you don't have to think that it has to have a larger scale. Do you want to do it in your office or off-site? And does that impact what that objective and that goal is? Is it all going to be co-located where we're all here right now? Is it distributed across multiple cities, and maybe there's streams going on and ways to interact with one another and engage globally? Is it something where it's a remote experience so that it's not captured in time and we have everything in documentation so that you don't have to worry about that component? Format requirements are a part of just finding a building. These are the things I sweat, like the F&B there is food and beverage, and what's the furniture, because I've gotten over 90 DMs about a certain type of chair. And then what's the cost of getting everyone there if that's the case? And not just a hotel or the flights, but how do I get you in between where the talks are and the closing party, if you have something to that effect? What are the meals that I need to feed you? Other components of this that I think are really crucial that to add on top is like, have I trained people? Is the staff aware of what our company culture is and how to engage with us? Has our diversity and belonging team reviewed the space? Does it comply with our code of conduct? All of these pieces. And then last, obviously not least, because features engage with each other and it's not sequential, we need the participation. We need people who are teaching. We need people who are learning. Ideally, they're all doing both. So who is teaching? How are they chosen? Do they need to be chosen, or are we unconferencing and they're all coming together? Is it just internal? Do we have money or want to bring in people externally, or are we reinforcing the message that we have what we need and we just need to get better at sharing it with each other? Do you pre-select what you're going to do? Do we get the fun of this afternoon where we just get to see what we're going to do and what calls out to us and go to another session? And how do we help incentivize those who are teaching and help support them so that they understand, no, it's really okay even if it's your first time, like how this is my first talk. And I'm not sure if I'm going on too long because like I'm just looking at this clock. And we'll see how we support them in order to get through it. So those are the 5 features. As some guesses, I wrote down what I did this past year, and then I tried to like make broad leaps. Apologies for guessing what TechKnowCon was going to be, having never come before. But you can even see there's alignment and overlap between things, but it's going to make a different experience. I just showed you what R&D Summit was, and It was the technical education, and there's a nuance and difference for how to provide that technical education. But I'm still giving it like a, yeah, we overlap. Same amount of time, but the formats are quite different. The scale is different, because, hi. So these were animated originally, which was going to be very funny. But features all cross paths and interact with one another. So let's say you're getting really focused on the fact that you have 2 days. You get 2 days. What do I get to do inside of that? How's it going to happen? You're just circling around this coffee cup, so fixated on it that you think it's the only piece that matters. Oh, it does. Meanwhile, someone is like, no, I'm grabbing the other pieces. Things are changing. You have to pay attention to how they're going to interact and work with one another, because they do cross places and make a complete breakfast. There we go. Okay, on to the next part. Again, how does this happen? And unfortunately, I've written this a lot, which is over-aggrandizing what I do, because I say, I am but one woman. And I'm going to need a whole group of people in order to do this. The entire concept is how we learn together, how we do things together. And frankly, I don't know enough about chairs to pull this off again. So who ends up making this kind of thing happen? I definitely recommend getting yourself a Maddie, Carolyn, Lauren, Leor, some guy that shows up to do karaoke with you, Daniela, Michael, and I would be happy to help you out if we can. But let's remind again and kind of go back to thinking we work at technical product companies. If we are product management in this role, then the conference is the product. Who else do we need? We're going to focus on what we do first. In order to get this event going, we're going to do some research. We're going to figure out past data. What are our constraints? We're going to survey people to see what we should be doing and teaching. We're going to talk with our leadership about if this is a priority. Look at our resources that we have available. I'm a big fan of a project brief. Keeping it fresh, making sure that we have alignment and agreement on something that has such a huge scope to say, hey, this is our North Star. This is what we're going to reference. These are the key components and the different features as we're setting them for now. And the roadmap to try to get there, because it's going to be a real long time, like a 9 months long time in my case. Then we also want to make sure, how do we measure this? How do I know it's worthwhile? Not just in the dollar and cents of how I work against my budget. Have people learned things? Do they want to engage with other disciplines? And if so, how much? Here's where the plus data gets really valuable to me. So these are some of the things that I think a technical learning person should keep in mind for it. I'll try to make sure we get slides around, because obviously I wrote a lot. Our CTO said that he really values this cross-functional approach. So again, we're going to need a team. So technical education, that's us. And then we go into how do we build this thing? The devs are doing the architecture, they're doing the construction, figuring out what's made. I've got an amazing internal culture team who has helped me out. They have lists of vendors. They are much better at math than I am. They have opinions about how to serve food. They understand all of the details and operationalizing in order to build an event in a way that I couldn't. And so I defer to their expertise, and I make sure we stay on focus with our goals. Our user experience is our R&D team and our leadership. They're determining, why are the people here? What are they getting out of it? How does it feel to them? What do they want? Because they know their audience. God, I'm doing bad on time. So the devs, being culture ops, are focusing on all of those pieces. We've got the R&D teams, so up top are literally the developers who would like cry if they knew I was calling them UX right now. And then on the bottom, I've got UX just to help balance it out. So they're building our content, they're figuring out the priorities, they're responsible for moving through and understanding that audience really well. And we work on these things together, because it's really important to overlap. If I'm working with them, I need to know, okay, is this communication accurate? I've maybe written what I think people have to know in order to come, but they can be like, no, Kate, we're not called data science. We are data scientists and engineers. And I'm like, oh, thank you. I get it now. I can see things like, okay, do we need to adjust the format because everyone is ending up producing talks rather than workshops, and make revisions like that. It's a collaborative nature to be able to put this out and understand what people need and what are the literal, sometimes like hallway space constraints to get them in. So that's my timeline. It's a real long project. This is me. My now lead made this before she was my lead, because it's a long time going and it can be really, really tiring. But also, people are really grateful and they get so much value. We send out a fairly long, like 15-minute survey to get feedback on individual main stage talks and the other pieces, and I'm at my time. But people also really want to let us know that they're grateful for the focus on learning, that their CEO came and gave them time to focus on education and said, I value this too, so much that it's a company value. So I wrote nice things that they wrote me. And every year, we're getting a higher percentage rate of people that are finding value from the content. We get proof and comments saying, I stay at Shopify because of this. I have the ability to have career growth. I am learning something new and not stalling out.